Ethan Cole worked as a human engineer on a lonely mining outpost far away from Earth. The planet was dry and covered in red dust, with wind that howled through the metal pipes of the colony. Every day felt the same to him. Work, fix machines, eat, sleep. He had stopped counting the days long ago. Humans were rare here. Most workers were aliens from different worlds, all too busy to talk to each other. Ethan liked the quiet, the silence that made him forget how empty the galaxy could feel. One hot afternoon, as he sat outside the small canteen eating his lunch, he noticed movement behind the water barrels. Two small shadows peeked at him. When he looked closer, he saw them. Two alien children, thin and dirty, their eyes wide with fear and hunger. They looked no older than 8 or 9. Their skin had a soft glow under the sunlight, like tiny stars trapped beneath their surface. Ethan blinked in surprise. He had never seen their kind before. He slowly held up a piece of bread. "You hungry?" he asked softly. The children looked at each other. The smaller one nodded but didn't move. Ethan smiled and placed the bread on a metal crate nearby. "Go on, take it," he said gently. After a few seconds, they ran forward, grabbed it, and disappeared again behind the barrels. He heard them munching quickly, their small voices whispering something in an unknown language. That night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about them. There weren't supposed to be any kids on this mining world. The colony was too dangerous, too poor. He wondered where they had come from, who had left them here. The next day, he brought extra food from the kitchen, some rice, a few vegetables, and a piece of dried meat. Again, when lunch came, the kids appeared. This time, they didn't hide. They stood a few feet away, watching him with cautious eyes. Ethan smiled again. "You can sit," he said, patting the bench beside him. The older one hesitated, but finally sat down. The smaller one followed, holding the other's sleeve tightly. They ate silently, their hands trembling as if afraid someone might take the food away. "What are your names?" Ethan asked. The older child looked up but said nothing. Instead, he touched his chest and said a single word, "Loro." Then he pointed to the younger one and said, "Nira." Ethan repeated the names slowly. "Loro and Nira," he said, smiling. "I'm Ethan." Nira's eyes sparkled when she heard his name. She pointed at him and repeated, "Ethan." It made him laugh. For the first time in years, he felt warm inside. Days passed, and the routine continued. Every noon, Ethan brought lunch and shared it with the kids. He told them simple human stories about oceans, trees, and blue skies. They listened with shining eyes, as if trying to imagine such a world. Sometimes Nira laughed, a small soft sound that made Ethan's chest tighten. He didn't realize how much he had missed laughter. But there was something strange about them. Their eyes glowed faintly at night, and when they were afraid, tiny sparks shimmered on their skin. Once, when Nira fell and scraped her knee, her blood glowed silver before fading. Ethan was shocked but said nothing. He simply bandaged her knee carefully. "All better," he said, and she smiled again. One evening, as Ethan was cleaning his work tools, he noticed markings on Loro's hands, thin silver lines forming symbols he didn't recognize. They looked like royal seals or ancient runes. He had seen something similar once in an old archive file about the Galactic Empire. Those marks were only found on the royal bloodline of the Zalari race, rulers of 1,000 systems. Ethan stared, his mind spinning. Could it be? No, impossible. Why would royal children be here starving on a forgotten mining planet? Still, the thought refused to leave his mind. He looked around nervously, feeling the cold wind rise. That night, the sky above the colony glowed with silent flashes. Distant drones hovered near the cliffs, their blue lights sweeping across the desert. Ethan stood by his window, heart pounding. Someone was searching for something, or someone. He looked at the small blanket in the corner of his hut where Loro and Nira were sleeping peacefully, their hands glowing faintly under the moonlight. Ethan felt a strange fear and protectiveness at the same time. Whoever they were, he knew one thing. These kids were in danger. The wind outside howled louder, carrying the faint hum of engines across the valley. Ethan turned off his lights and whispered to himself, "Whatever's happening, it's not normal." And as the night deepened, a shadow passed over the camp, a massive ship in the distance, its insignia glowing silver against the stars. Ethan didn't know it yet, but the simple act of sharing his lunch had just pulled him into the center of the galaxy's greatest secret. The next morning came with strange silence. The wind that usually whistled across the mining outpost was gone, and even the machines seemed quieter. Ethan walked toward the canteen with his lunchbox in hand, hoping to see the two kids again. But the barrels where they usually hid were empty. No small footprints in the dust, no faint giggles, nothing. A tight feeling grew in his chest. He looked around, pretending to check the pipes, but his eyes kept scanning the area. Something didn't feel right. He noticed a set of footprints leading behind the old water tank, smaller than his boots. Following them, he found Loro and Nira crouched behind the metal wall, their eyes wide with fear. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. "They are looking for us," Loro whispered, his voice trembling. "They have ships," Ethan frowned. "Who's looking for you?" Before Loro could answer, a deep rumbling sound filled the air. Ethan looked up and saw a patrol of alien soldiers walking across the mining yard. Their armor gleamed black and gold under the sun, and they carried scanning devices that hummed with energy. Everyone in the camp stopped to watch as the soldiers moved in a tight formation, checking faces and badges. Ethan quickly pushed the kids inside the canteen through the back door. "Hide in the cellar," he said. "Don't make a sound." Nira looked terrified, but she nodded and grabbed Loro's hand. They slipped into the dark space beneath the floor. Ethan covered the trap door with an old metal crate just before a soldier entered the canteen. "Human," the soldier said sharply. "State your name." "Ethan Cole," he answered calmly, trying to keep his hands steady. The soldier scanned his face with a glowing device. "What is your job here?" "Engineer. Maintenance on the mining pumps," Ethan said. "What's going on?" The soldier's narrow eyes flashed. "Two young fugitives were seen near this area. If you have any information, you must report it." "Fugitives? Kids?" Ethan asked, acting confused. "Haven't seen anyone but workers." The soldier stared at him for a long moment, then glanced around the room. The scanner in his hand beeped once but stopped suddenly. He frowned, tapped the screen, then turned away. "Stay alert, human," he said, leaving the canteen. Ethan waited until the sound of boots faded before he rushed to lift the crate. "It's okay," he whispered. "They're gone." The two kids crawled out. Nira's small hands were shaking, and Loro's glowing eyes were filled with guilt. "They almost found us," Loro said quietly. "They can track our blood." "Your blood?" Ethan asked. Loro nodded. "They can feel our energy, our mark. That's why we stay close to metal. It hides us." Ethan sat down slowly. "Who are you running from?" Loro hesitated, then said softly, "From home." That answer confused Ethan even more. He wanted to ask more questions, but the sound of an announcement echoed through the colony speakers. The metallic voice said, "Attention residents. Imperial search teams are in operation. Do not interfere. Report any suspicious individuals immediately." Ethan looked at the kids. "Imperial search teams," he repeated under his breath. "You mean the Empire?" Loro didn't answer. He just looked down. But in that silence, Ethan understood something big was happening. These weren't just lost orphans. Someone powerful was hunting them. Later that evening, the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the desert sky in deep orange and purple. Ethan sat near the canteen's window, watching distant lights hover above the horizon. Drones again, bigger this time, moving in perfect formation. They scanned the area with wide beams of blue light. He turned off his lamp and waited in the dark, every muscle tense. A sudden knock startled him. It was Nira. She held out a small silver pendant shaped like a star. "Mama gave this," she said softly. "She said it will protect us." Ethan took it carefully. The pendant glowed faintly when he touched it, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. "It's beautiful," he said. "Your mother must love you very much." "She does," Nira whispered. "She said humans are kind. She said one day we will meet one." She smiled sadly. "Maybe she meant you." Ethan's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say. He had only given them food, yet somehow that small kindness meant so much to them. But before he could respond, a sharp noise echoed through the camp, an explosion in the distance. The ground trembled. He looked out the window and saw smoke rising near the colony gate. Soldiers ran toward the noise, shouting commands. Ethan grabbed his jacket. "We need to stay hidden," he told the kids. "Whatever's happening, it's getting worse." In the sky above, massive ships broke through the clouds, their engines roaring. The insignia on their hulls glowed bright silver, the mark of the galactic Empress herself. Ethan didn't yet realize that the woman commanding those ships was the same mother Nira had just spoken of, and soon their worlds were about to collide. The colony didn't sleep that night. The air was thick with fear and dust as soldiers moved from house to house, searching for something, or someone. Bright blue lights cut through the darkness, scanning walls and faces. Ethan watched from his small window, holding his breath. In the cellar below, Laura and Nira huddled together, whispering softly in their language. The sound of engines filled the sky. Ethan stepped outside and looked up. Massive warships floated above the desert, their hulls gleaming silver under the twin moons. The Imperial insignia, a circle surrounded by flame-like wings, was clear even from miles away. It was the same symbol he had seen glowing faintly on the children's skin. He finally understood the truth he had been trying not to believe. These weren't just alien kids. They were royal. The missing children of the galactic Empress herself. Ethan's stomach twisted. He had read about the Empress once, Zalira of the Zalari Dominion. She ruled half the galaxy, her word law across thousands of worlds. If she found out a human had been hiding her children, the punishment would be beyond imagination. But if he turned them in, what would happen to them? He remembered their hungry faces, Nira's shy smile, Laura's trembling hands. They weren't threats. They were just children. The next morning, a broadcast played through the colony speakers. The metallic voice of the Imperial commander echoed, "Attention, citizens. The royal heirs of the Zalari Empire have been kidnapped. Anyone harboring them will face execution. A reward of 1 million credits will be given for information leading to their safe return." Ethan froze. Around him, the other workers began whispering, their faces filled with greed and fear. He knew it was only a matter of time before someone came knocking on his door. He rushed back to the canteen, locked the door, and went down to the cellar. The children were awake, their eyes wide. "They know," Ethan said quietly. "They're looking everywhere," Lauro nodded, his voice low. "They will find us soon. The Empire never stops." "There must be a way to get you off this planet," Ethan said, pacing the room. "Something fast. Something that doesn't attract attention." "There's an old cargo pod near the West Ridge," Lauro said. "We saw it when we ran." Ethan frowned. "It's broken, isn't it?" "I can fix it," Lauro said softly. "You showed me how." Ethan was surprised. He hadn't realized the boy had been watching him so closely during his repairs. "You're full of surprises, kid," he said with a small smile. That night the colony shook with thunder, not from the weather, but from ships landing. Soldiers in black armor began setting up scanners and checkpoints. They questioned every worker, even tearing apart storage rooms. Ethan pretended to sleep while they searched the houses nearby. His heart pounded so loud he was sure they could hear it. Suddenly, someone knocked on his door. 3 heavy bangs, he opened it slowly. A tall alien officer stood there, her armor shining like liquid metal. Her eyes glowed faint blue, cold and sharp. "Human," she said. "You work maintenance here?" "Yes, ma'am," Ethan replied carefully. "Have you seen anything unusual? 2 small beings about this tall?" She gestured with her hand. "Royal markings, silver eyes?" Ethan shook his head. "No, ma'am. Haven't seen any kids at all." She stared at him for a long moment as if trying to read his thoughts. "If you do, you will report immediately," she said. "For your own safety?" "Of course," Ethan said, forcing a smile. When she left, he locked the door and slumped against it, breathing hard. He could feel his hands shaking. Nira peeked from the cellar hatch, her eyes full of tears. "She was one of Mother's guards," she whispered. "She thinks we were taken by enemies." Ethan's chest tightened. "Your mother? She doesn't know you ran away." Nira shook her head. "She would be angry. We just wanted to see the stars without guards. We wanted to be free." He looked at them both, realizing the truth of their small rebellion. They were not kidnapped, they had escaped. And now the Empire was tearing the galaxy apart to find them. Later that night, Ethan took them out through the dark mining fields. They stayed low, moving through shadows. The sound of engines hummed far above. Drones passed overhead, their light sweeping the sand. Every time they came close, Ethan pulled the children under metal scraps or into old tunnels until the lights faded. Finally, they reached the West Ridge. The old cargo pod was half buried in dust, its door rusted and open. Ethan climbed inside and began checking the power coils. "It might work," he said. "If I can reroute the core." Lauro helped him, his small hands surprisingly steady. Together they worked silently, the only sound the wind and distant thunder of engines. After hours, the pod lights flickered weakly, then steadied. Nira smiled in awe. "It's alive." But before Ethan could answer, a bright beam of light swept across the ridge, hitting the pod. A drone had spotted them. "Run!" Ethan shouted, pushing the kids inside the pod. The ground shook as the drone fired a warning blast nearby. Ethan slammed the hatch shut and hit the ignition. The pod roared to life, engine sputtering but running. "Hold on!" he yelled, as the pod lifted from the sand. A formation of Imperial ships turned toward them, silver lights blazing. In that moment, Ethan knew. There was no turning back now. The small cargo pod screamed through the night sky, shaking from old age and loose panels. Ethan gripped the control stick tightly, trying to keep it steady as the wind tore across the metal hull. Laura sat beside him, helping read the flashing lights on the panel, while Nira clung to the seat straps, her wide silver eyes glowing with fear. Below them, beams of blue light swept across the desert as Imperial ships chased their signal. Ethan pulled the lever for manual override, sending the pod diving between canyons of red rock. The enemy scanners lost them for a few seconds, long enough for him to kill the engines and hide the pod under a cliff ledge. The noise faded. Only silence remained. "Are we safe?" Nira asked in a trembling voice. "For now," Ethan said, his heart still racing. "But they'll be back. We need to move when it's dark again." Laura checked the screen. "They tracked us when the pod went online. The Imperial ships use deep scanners. They can follow energy signals from far away. Then we'll travel on foot," Ethan said, standing up. "Less noise, less light. We head north through the canyon. There's an abandoned miner's route. It leads to the old outpost. If we reach it, I can find something stronger to hide you in." The two children nodded. They trusted him completely now, and that made the weight on Ethan's chest even heavier. As the night deepened, they walked under the glowing moons. The desert sand shimmered like glass, and the sound of their footsteps echoed between the rocks. Sometimes Nira would stumble, and Ethan would lift her gently, carrying her on his shoulders. "Almost there," he whispered each time. "We're almost there." Halfway through the canyon, they saw something ahead. Lights. Dozens of soldiers were scanning the cliffs. Ethan pulled the kids behind a boulder, holding a finger to his lips. The soldiers were setting up a perimeter. In the middle stood a tall alien woman clad in shining silver armor. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, her presence powerful and cold. Ethan felt a chill. "Who is she?" he whispered. Laura's voice shook. "That's Mother." Ethan stared at him in disbelief. "That's the Empress?" Laura nodded. "Empress Xylera of the Zilari Dominion, ruler of the royal bloodline, and our mother." Ethan peeked over the rock again. The Empress stood still as her guards brought a prisoner before her. The poor miner trembled as she questioned him, her voice calm but heavy with authority. "Where are my children?" she asked. I don't know, Your Majesty," the miner stammered. "I swear," the Empress raised her hand. The air shimmered, and the man froze in place, lifted by invisible energy. A blue light surrounded him, and then he fell limp, unconscious but alive. "Bring him back to the ship," she ordered coldly. "He might remember something later." Ethan's breath caught. She was powerful, too powerful. He couldn't imagine what she'd do if she discovered he was hiding her royal children. As the soldiers spread out, Ethan guided Laura and Nira deeper into a narrow crack between the rocks. They crawled through, emerging into a hidden valley lit by soft green moss. For the first time, they could breathe again. "We can stay here until dawn," Ethan said, sitting beside a rock wall. "Then I'll think of a plan." Nira sat close to him, her small hand gripping his sleeve. "You're not afraid of her?" she asked softly. Ethan looked into her glowing eyes. "Everyone's afraid of power," he said. "But kindness is stronger. And right now you two need kindness more than fear." Laura looked down. "Mother isn't bad, she just forgets what it feels like to be small." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then maybe she needs someone to remind her." Suddenly a faint humming filled the air. Drones. Ethan turned off his flashlight and pressed the kids close against the rocks. The small machines flew over the canyon, scanning the ground. One of them stopped mid-air, its red sensor blinking. Ethan's pulse raced. He reached for a metal pipe nearby, lifted it, and threw it far into the darkness. The sound echoed, and the drone turned away, chasing the noise. When the danger passed, Laura whispered, "You saved us again." Ethan shook his head. "No, I'm just keeping my promise to protect you." At dawn, the first light touched the valley. Ethan looked toward the horizon and saw something glowing in the distance, an imperial city floating in the air, its towers gleaming like glass. And in its heart stood the Empress's palace, surrounded by energy shields. He realized then that no matter how far they ran, they couldn't hide forever. If the Empress truly ruled half the galaxy, she would never stop searching for her children. But Ethan also knew something the Empire didn't. The children didn't need a soldier to save them. They needed someone human. And maybe, just maybe, he was the one who could change the way even an Empress saw humanity. The desert sun rose red and heavy, painting the rocks in firelight. Ethan hadn't slept. He sat against the canyon wall, staring at the horizon where the Empress's ships shimmered like silver daggers in the morning sky. Every hum of an engine made his heart tighten. The royal patrols were moving closer each hour. Hiding was no longer an option. Loro and Nira still slept beside him, their faces peaceful despite the danger. Ethan watched them and wondered how two children could look so innocent, and yet carry a secret that could shake the galaxy. He didn't know what to do anymore. Return them and risk their punishment, or keep running and doom himself. As the light brightened, the air around the canyon shimmered. Ethan felt it first, like a cold pressure pressing against his skin. He stood up quickly. "Stay here," he whispered to the kids. He climbed the rocks and looked down the valley. A troop of Imperial soldiers marched toward them, dozens of armored figures moving in perfect formation. And at their center rode the Empress herself, her silver armor glowing like a star, her blue eyes scanning every shadow. Ethan's pulse quickened. "They found us," he muttered. Nira grabbed his hand. "We can't go back," she said, her small voice trembling. "If she finds us, she'll send us away forever." "She's your mother," Ethan said softly. "She loves you." "She loves the crown," Loro said bitterly. "Not us." The sound of marching grew louder. Ethan looked toward the old escape pod at the canyon's edge. It still had some power left, maybe enough to cause a distraction. He thought quickly, then turned to the kids. "Listen to me. I'll lead them away. You two head north through the tunnels. There's an abandoned shaft there. It'll hide your energy from their scanners." Nira's eyes filled with tears. "But you'll be caught." Ethan knelt and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Maybe, but you'll be safe. That's all that matters." Before they could argue, the first wave of soldiers entered the canyon. Ethan ran toward the pod, grabbed a metal pipe, and smashed the control panel. Sparks flew, and the pod's engines flared to life, roaring loudly. The soldiers shouted and turned their weapons toward the noise. "There," one of them yelled. "By the ridge." Ethan threw himself behind a rock as the air exploded with plasma fire. The ground shook and sand blasted against his face. He crawled through the dust, moving away from the children's hiding spot. His lungs burned, but he kept going, drawing the soldiers' attention farther and farther from them. Then the sky darkened. A massive shadow passed overhead. The Empress herself landed, her aura so strong that the air rippled around her. Ethan froze as she stepped forward, her long cape fluttering in the wind. Her glowing eyes locked on him instantly. "A human," she said coldly. "Why are you here?" Ethan stood slowly, hands raised. "Just a worker, Your Majesty. Got lost in the storm." Her eyes narrowed. "You lie." She took one step closer, and Ethan felt a weight crush down on him, a force field of raw power. "You have something that belongs to me." Ethan's heart pounded. He could feel her presence inside his mind, searching, pressing deeper. He thought of the kids, Loro and Nira, hiding in the tunnel, clutching each other. He tried to block the image, but it slipped through. The Empress's expression changed instantly. Her voice softened. "You hid them." Ethan swallowed hard. "They're just children," he said. "They were starving. I couldn't leave them to die." Her glowing eyes dimmed slightly. "Do you understand what you've done, human? The galaxy burns for them. Armies search every world. My enemies use their names to start wars. I didn't do it for politics," Ethan said quietly. "I did it because no one else did." The Empress studied him for a long time. The soldiers waited behind her, motionless. Then she raised her hand and the pressure vanished. Ethan fell to his knees, gasping. "You have courage," she said finally, "and foolishness." She turned her head toward the canyon. "Bring me my children." "No," Ethan shouted, stepping forward. "They don't want to go back. They want to be free." The soldiers lifted their weapons, but the Empress raised a hand. "Stand down." Her eyes glowed brighter. "You speak as if freedom is yours to give. Ethan met her gaze. Maybe not. But kindness is, and that's something your empire seems to have forgotten. A long silence followed. The wind howled between the rocks. Finally, the Empress lowered her head slightly, almost in thought. Perhaps you are right, human, she said softly. Perhaps I have forgotten. Before Ethan could reply, two small figures stepped out from behind the rocks. Loro and Nira stood there, their faces full of tears. Mother, Nira whispered. Please don't hurt him. The Empress's expression broke for the first time. She walked toward them slowly, kneeling down. Her hands trembled as she touched their faces. My children, you are safe. Ethan watched quietly, his chest tight. He had risked everything. And somehow it had brought a mother and her children together again, but deep inside he knew this wasn't the end. The Empress's eyes, though soft now, still held something powerful. A decision forming. One that would change the fate of them all. The canyon was silent after the confrontation, the kind of silence that followed a storm. Dust still floated in the golden air as Ethan stood frozen, unsure what to say or do. Before him, the Galactic Empress knelt, her silver armor reflecting the rising sun. Her royal guards waited at a distance, unsure whether to step forward or remain still. Nira clung to her mother's arm, and Loro stood beside her, torn between fear and relief. The Empress looked at her children as if she couldn't believe they were real. For years she had ruled worlds, commanded fleets, and signed orders that changed millions of lives. But in that moment, she was just a mother seeing her children again. Ethan lowered his head, expecting anger, maybe even punishment. He had lied, disobeyed, and hidden royal heirs. But instead of rage, the Empress only spoke softly. You fed them? Yes, Ethan said quietly. Every day until the soldiers came. They were hungry, alone. Her gaze lingered on him, unreadable. Why would a human risk his life for alien children? He shrugged slightly. Because no one else did. The Empress exhaled slowly, her expression thoughtful. Humans, in always acting on heart instead of logic. Ethan gave a tired smile. Maybe that's what makes us human. For a moment she said nothing. The desert wind whispered between them. Then she rose to her full height, towering over him. You understand that by hiding them you interfered with royal security, she said. Her tone was calm but heavy. I understand, Ethan said. If you're going to punish me, do it. But don't blame them. They just wanted to see the world beyond your palace. Her eyes flickered with something, pain, maybe regret. They told you that? Ethan nodded. They just wanted to feel free, to live like normal kids. The Empress looked at her children again. Loro met her gaze, his voice trembling but brave. We didn't mean to hurt you, Mother. We just wanted to know what it's like out here. To see the stars without guards or orders. The Empress reached out, touching his cheek gently. You are my blood, Loro, my heir. The stars are yours already. But they never felt like ours, he said softly. That struck something deep in her. For a moment, the Empress turned away, staring toward the horizon. The light caught her face, and Ethan saw it. Exhaustion hidden behind the armor. Sorrow buried beneath power. She whispered almost to herself. I built an empire so vast I forgot what it was for. Ethan watched quietly, sensing that something inside her was changing. Then one of the guards approached cautiously. Your Majesty, the fleets await your command. Should we prepare the prisoners for questioning? The Empress turned sharply. There will be no prisoners, she said. And no punishment, the guard blinked. But Your Majesty, she raised a hand. Silence. The air rippled with her power, and the guard stepped back instantly. Ethan felt the tension ease in his chest. She wasn't going to harm him. Not today. She turned back to him. You risked your life for them. You defied my soldiers, deceived my empire. Tell me, human, what do you want in return? Ethan shook his head. I don't want anything. I just want them safe. Her eyes softened again, the faintest smile touching her lips. That is unusual. Most beings would have sold them for fortune or favor. Maybe most beings don't see kids first, he said. They just see power. The Empress stared at him for a long moment, then stepped closer. Her voice dropped lower. Do you know what my people say about humans, Ethan Cole? He shook his head. They say humans are wild, reckless, unpredictable, but they also say you feel things deeply. You love fiercely. You act without fear. Ethan met her gaze. Sometimes that's all we have. The Empress looked down at her children again. Nira smiled shyly and held out her small hand. Mama, Ethan's nice. The mighty ruler of half the galaxy smiled. genuinely smiled for the first time. "Yes, little one," she said softly. "He is," and she turned to her guards. "Prepare transport." We returned to the capital. Ethan tensed. "Wait, what about me?" She looked at him again, her eyes unreadable. "You will come with us." His stomach dropped. "With you? Why?" "Because my children trust you," she said simply. "And because I wish to learn why." Before he could argue, a beam of blue light surrounded them. The ground dissolved beneath his feet as the teleport field activated. The canyon faded away, replaced by the endless expanse of stars. Moments later, Ethan stood aboard the Grand Imperial ship, the heart of the Zalari Empire. Its walls pulsed with living energy, and through the transparent floor he could see planets far below, turning like jewels in the dark. The Empress looked out the massive window, her reflection glowing against the void. "Ethan Cole," she said quietly, "you have changed the fate of this empire, though you do not yet understand how." Ethan glanced at Loro and Nira, who smiled at him with trust and warmth. He realized then that what began as a small act of kindness had reached places he could never have imagined. And as the ship sailed through the stars, the Empress whispered to herself, "Perhaps the galaxy still has something to learn from humans." The royal flagship glided silently through the black sea of stars, its silver hull glowing like a drifting moon. Inside its great command hall, every wall shimmered with living energy. Ethan stood near a wide glass window, staring at the galaxy below. He had never imagined standing in a place like this, the throne ship of the Galactic Empress herself. Behind him, armored guards lined the golden corridor, their eyes cold and watchful. Yet strangely, no one treated him as a prisoner. He wore no cuffs, no restraints. Only the heavy silence reminded him that he didn't belong here. The great doors slid open and the Empress entered. The room seemed to shift with her presence. Her silver armor was gone now, replaced by flowing white robes woven with faint threads of light. Her eyes, still glowing faint blue, no longer looked like a ruler's. They looked like a mother's. Loro and Nira followed close behind, dressed in clean robes of soft silver. They looked happy, but Ethan could see in their faces the same question he had. What would happen next? "You have been quiet, human," the Empress said gently, her voice calm and rich like distant thunder. Ethan bowed slightly. "Just trying to understand all this. Yesterday I was fixing engines. Today I'm standing on a ship that rules half the stars." A small smile touched her lips. "Fate moves strangely, Ethan Cole. Even empresses are not immune to it." He looked at her, unsure if she was teasing him. "What happens now?" She studied him for a long moment. "Now you will see the world you changed." She gestured, and the floor beneath them transformed into transparent glass. Below, the empire unfolded like a painting. Cities floating in clouds, ships gliding between glowing rings, rivers of light stretching across entire worlds. But beyond the beauty, Ethan noticed something else. Huge mining colonies, crowded labor fields, worlds stripped bare. "Your empire," he said quietly. "It's vast. It is also hollow," she replied. "Built on obedience and fear. I thought power was the way to protect what I loved. But my children reminded me of something I had forgotten. Kindness." Ethan said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence spoke enough. The Empress turned to him. "You gave them food, warmth, and safety with nothing to gain. In a galaxy that worships strength, that is power of another kind. The kind my empire lost long ago." Nira smiled and tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mama, can Ethan stay with us?" The Empress looked down at her daughter, then back at Ethan. "Perhaps," she said softly. "If he wishes," Ethan blinked. "Stay? Here?" "Yes," she said. "Not as a servant or soldier, but as an advisor, an outsider who sees with clear eyes. You have shown me what compassion looks like when it costs something. I want that voice near me." He hesitated. "I'm just a mechanic, Your Majesty. I fix broken things." Her gaze softened. "Exactly. My empire is broken, Ethan Cole. Help me fix it." For a moment, Ethan couldn't speak. The idea was impossible, yet it felt right. He thought of the children, of the dusty mining camp, of the simple lunches he had shared. Maybe this was where he was meant to be. Not as a hero, but as a reminder. He nodded slowly. "All right. But I'll only tell the truth even if you don't like it." The Empress smiled faintly. "That is precisely why I want you here." Then she turned toward the hall. "Prepare the ceremony," she ordered her guards. Hours later, The great throne chamber filled with thousands, nobles, soldiers, ambassadors from across the stars. The Empress stood at the center, her children beside her, while Ethan waited uncertainly behind. When she raised her hand, the hall fell silent. "Citizens of the Zalari Dominion," her voice echoed, "today we honor a being who has reminded us of what true strength means, a human from a forgotten colony who showed mercy when others would have turned away." Whispers filled the hall as she gestured for Ethan to step forward. The lights dimmed and a beam of silver light illuminated him. "For saving my heirs," she said, "and for teaching even an empress humility, I bestow upon you the Star Medal of Mercy, the highest honor of the Zalari Empire." A drone floated down, carrying a glowing medal shaped like a falling star. The Empress took it and placed it around Ethan's neck. Her voice lowered so only he could hear. "May the galaxy remember that even the smallest kindness can outshine the brightest throne." Ethan bowed his head. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The crowd erupted into applause, their voices echoing through the vast chamber. For the first time, humans were not spoken of as relics of an old war or forgotten wanderers. They were spoken of with respect. When the ceremony ended, the children ran to Ethan. Loro grinned. "You're part of our family now," Nira added softly. "Mama says you'll teach the stars to be kind again." Ethan smiled, looking out at the sea of shining lights beyond the window. "Maybe we'll all learn together," he said. As the flagship sailed through the stars, a new symbol appeared on its hull, a silver star wrapped in human hands. It was the Empress's decree, spreading across her empire. Mercy is strength. And somewhere, among those endless stars, the legend began, of a lonely human who shared his lunch with hungry children and ended up changing the heart of a galaxy.